This video is supported in part by Retro Days, a place for nostalgia nerds to gather, share memories, chat, and engage. Go to retrodays.com or check their YouTube channel linked below. This unassuming little red book packs a double dose of nostalgia. I'll show you what I'm talking about right now.
Don't you know that you're a grown up? No games, no puns. Not allowed if you're a grown up.
Hey there, welcome back to GenXGrownUp. I'm John, I am a GenXGrownUp, and I want to thank you for checking out this video, and hopefully the rest of the channel. I'm a sucker for these arcade nostalgia coffee table books. I already have a healthy stack of these, and I don't particularly need an excuse to buy a new one, but man, when I came across this new book for read-only memory, the SEGA Arcade PopUp History book, it just took a couple of glances to know that I was going to whip out my credit card. So first of all, SEGA Arcade History is right in the title. It's all about some of the things we loved in the arcades growing up as Generation Xers. But this book in particular focuses on the sit-down or ride-in games, the body experience games that they were nicknamed. Now, just like so many of these cool hardback tabletop arcade history books that have come before it, the SEGA history book covers particularly SEGA stuff. We're talking about stuff like Outrun and Hang On and Afterburner, Space Harrier, and stuff like that. Games that we've loved. This SEGA Arcade Pop-Up History book presents 6 of the most iconic SEGA body sensation video game cabinets, including Hang On, Space Harrier, Outrun, Afterburner, Thunderblade, and Power Drift in an innovative form as dazzling pop-up paper sculptures. Accompanying this 3D showcase is a written history from Guardian Games writer and best-selling novelist Keith Stewart, punctuated by specially restored production artwork and beautifully reproduced in-game screens. The book features contributions from arcade game innovator Yu Suzuki, who offers first-hand insight into the development of these groundbreaking games and the birth of the Taiken cabinet phenomenon. But this one goes the extra mile. This is like taking arcade nostalgia and mashing it up with the joy that you felt at the Scholastic Book Fair. Because this unassuming little book is not just a glossy paged book, it's when you get to the back that the real magic of this thing shines. As you get to the pop-up gallery in the back, it begins with Hang On from 1985. I remember this one because you kind of sat astraddle of it and there were no moving parts on the handlebars. You leaned the entire bike left and right. Next up, also from 85, is Space Harrier. This was a cockpit-style game that you sat in and the entire machine was jolted around with little motors that made you feel like you were inside of the action. It's followed by the 1986 Outrun. I'm sure you probably remember many times hopping behind the wheel of this fancy little red sports car that even let you pick your own road trip music before you started the game. I usually ran out of time before I hit that second checkpoint, but it always sucked up my quarters. Following on after that is Afterburner from 1987. Man, this ride-in body sensation cabinet was a beast. I only remember seeing it one time at a big arcade, and it was a monster. And it cost an unprecedented 50 cents when everything else was costing a quarter, but it was worth it. It really enclosed you and gave you the feel of being in a jet dogfight. Rounding out the last couple is 1987's Thunderblade, the helicopter simulator. If you remember playing this one in the arcade, you might recall it's less of an enveloping experience and more of a showcase experience. You sit up in this tall helicopter seat and you've got that yoke right in front of you, and man, it really gives you the feeling that you were in that helicopter. And finally, last but not least, is the 1988 Power Drift sit-down cabinet. This Power Drift cabinet had a much narrower release, so I don't even remember seeing one myself, but it follows right along in the same style of all these other SEGA sit-down or ride-in cabinets that we sure all enjoyed as Generation Xers growing up in the 80s. I'm really glad that I picked this book up. I love what they've done here. Admittedly, this is not for everyone. If you're a Generation Xer, though, who grew up in the era of arcade machines and going to the arcade, and especially if you remember the joy of the Scholastic Book Fair where you could get books that weren't educational, they were just purely for your entertainment, and sometimes they were gadgety and kitschy, like this one, wow. If this sounds at all for you, I'll throw a link down in the description of this video where you can find the SEGA Arcade History pop-up book and import one for yourself. Man, I really hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye. GenXGrownUp is dedicated to bringing you new Generation X inspired videos every week. Here are a couple more you can watch right now, but for even more, subscribe and enable those notifications. And if you love what we do, we invite you to support us over on Patreon. And of course, your feedback in the comments and a quick thumbs up are always appreciated.